Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of Dexter Original Sin Episode 4, Fender Bender. Please make sure to also check out, after this review, my interview with the actress of Deb, Molly Brown. It's a really fun time. I hope you like it. So, I'm going to break my review into three parts. We're going to start with everything going on with Dexter, then we'll go to everything going on with Harry's flashbacks, and then we'll go to everything going on with Deb in this episode. Now, I absolutely love how they did this opening where you start with everybody dancing out, you got these rollerbladers, and it completely changes tone to seeing a kid hanging from a bridge. Really shocking the way they did that, and I actually thought it was very effective. And this was good to see Dexter dealing with this, and that it shows how murdered children, like he says, always got to him, and he won't kill children. We know this about him. It's in his code, and he likes children more than adults. We know about Dexter. We'll even see an example of that when he's talking to Spencer's kid about Sonic. And it's also interesting because it's actually one of the most normal things about Dexter is how much he likes kids, sees them as innocent, and that he is able to feel this feeling he's have seeing a murdered child, of how it would naturally mess anybody up. Now, I've also mentioned how I think Spencer is clearly the one that is doing something nefarious and that he is behind some of these killings that are going on with the judge's kid. There's more signs of that here when he quickly doesn't want LaGuardia talking to the press, and he wants her off of this specific case. He quickly sends her to the Coconut Grove case where we'll see Dexter goes, but it's interesting that he feels threatened by LaGuardia. I believe that he knows she deep down is a good detective and doesn't want her anywhere near him, and it would be someone who is more unbiased as well. So I really think he's obviously going to end up being a villain. Now we meet this cop with Dexter, Clark. He tells Dexter not to bottle up his feelings and to take action. And I love how this story of Dexter works. When people give him advice, it's things that he kind of can just add to his current situation that they have no idea how crazy it is. But this is the reason why Dex will get motivated to go look at cold case files. But before we even see Dex go more into that, we actually see he's given a shot at this crime scene by LaGuardia to show off his forensic skills. And she's not realizing, though, that why he's so good at what he does is from experience himself and knowing things about especially the intimate feelings a killer could have. But Dexter's urges come in really hard here from seeing a kid killed like this. It makes him angry, and it's going to lead to him wanting to just kill somebody. But this is where he tells Harry this, and he shows him the case file on Mad Dog. So he says this guy is suspected of being a contract killer for the mob, and he could have a 200 body count. But of course the dad won't approve something like this unless there's some proof. That's the deal they made. So that's what Dexter goes to get. He breaks into Mad Dog's house pretty easily, and he uses his back scratcher, which was great. But he finds a picture in the paper shredder of someone who he thinks will be Mad Dog's next victim, someone who is gonna snitch. Now, I think Mad Dog could actually be a misdirect, that he's actually a killer, and that maybe he does just foreclose on people, and that Dexter might have got this wrong. Especially because he wouldn't be good at hiding things if he was a killer, and especially not good at having security at his house. So I'm curious to see how that ends up. But while it shifts focus from that, we go to the main case again with the child who was killed, and you'll see that Tanya will mention that the kid was only fed ham and cheese, Sunny Smiles. Those things are important. They showed that in a previous episode, even though it seems like they just mentioned, oh, that's at every grocery store, but that will connect somewhere later on. Also that he was killed by an ice pick in the back of his head. So I'd love to hear you guys' theories if you're catching on to who this killer might be. And we also get to see some more into Spencer's personal life here, so they're giving his character a little more weight too, which is important, and that he's really not there for his kid, and his ex-wife Becca eventually cheated on him. But I also think it's important we see Dex with the kid talking about Sonic, that he comforts him, gives him candy, but he learns that his dad used to take him to arcade. These lines, again, always seem like they're not important, but they are, because I feel like when Dexter later on gets on to who I think is going to be Spencer, that there's going to be some connection there to that arcade machine he was talking about and why his dad might have really been going to that arcade with his son. And we also get to see Dex do a classic Dex show here at the station. He uses melons and ketchup, but he explains to LaGuardia it was about the kill. It was intimate. And she's starting to see his skills more and more. And Tanya walks in at the end. She goes, "Are those my cantaloupes?" And it leads to a great humorous moment with Masuka hands off Tanya's melons and does the laugh great again. And then when Dex talks to Clark again and talks about how Clark lost his brother, there's a great line here with Dexter saying to Clark, I have only ever had a few people who ever knew me, but I had to cut ties with them, which I thought was really cut well with him thinking of the people he just murdered who saw his mask off. And another great humorous moment is when Dexter tells Harry about what he found on Mad Dog. And Harry says to him, he's a professional hitman, Dexter. You think you can beat Michael Jordan at one-on-one? And Dexter says, who? And at this time, Michael Jordan's known by anyone who exists on Earth, so it's so funny that Dexter, of course, wouldn't even know who he is. But Harry gives him the go-ahead here. And he also gave him a good tip, because if he is this killer that he thinks he is, yeah, he's going against someone who's killed possibly 200 people, and it's almost getting too cocky here for Dexter. And you see Dexter's getting more and more feeling like he's confirming his suspicions by how he talks about the people he supposedly forecloses on, but I still think this might be that he actually does do this and he's not a killer. But Dex hits Mad Dog at his house with a guitar, a Fender. Episode is titled Fender Bender, so it makes sense. And we also get a little bit of a collision with a car here at the end where the car hits Mad Dog, which was crazy. So that leaves that cliffhanger for that story, which I thought was interesting. So I thought everything with Dexter here was pretty strong and up to par for what most of the season has been. Now let's go to everything going with Harry's flashback, but I do want to bring up the scene I didn't mention yet about Harry, which is important in the present. We see Harry goes to Camilla and asks her to triple check that all mentions of Dexter have been removed from Laura Moser's case files. So it's really interesting how he is so paranoid too of Dexter ever finding out that he was involved with that and how his mom died, and seeing her literally being chainsawed with his brother next to him. He's completely forgotten that he even had a brother. Now in the flashback, Harry's partner can sense that there's a thing between him and Laura. And he's like, she's your informant, don't forget that. And you see that Harry is also getting more and more worried about Laura here as they're getting closer to Estrada. But we'll see Harry ends up on babysitting duty with Dexter and Brian. I really like they did this because it's developing what Harry and Dexter's relationship would be and a little bit of how his relationship was with Brian. It's interesting stuff we didn't really get to see at that time. I thought it was also fascinating that Brian was outside ripping tails off lizards. We know that Brian will come to love limbs, but it also makes me wonder, did he already have some kind of killer or what he was before the incident with his mother? Because we see the opposite with Dexter. They're showing you where Dexter was trying to help a lizard and that Dex would be triggered by what happened to his mom. So it makes me more curious about the character of Brian. It seems like the show is very interested in the character of Brian, which I like because that's a character we just know less about than Dexter. So I like that there might be alluding to something like that. Now it's also interesting Harry gets this PTSD when he can't find Dexter. He's thinking about how he had lost his son in the pool. So I'm going to be curious to how they're going to explain that Brian and Dexter ended up with Laura in that container. And we'll see this time Laura and Harry get it on. Harry will fall into his temptations and has this affair. So I also thought that was really strong in the flashbacks. I thought they served a good purpose for Harry's character and for Brian and for Dexter. Now, where I think the episode suffered a bit compared to others is with Deb's storyline. It still has very funny lines, which I'm going to point out, but it did feel like they didn't know what to really do with Deb in this episode, and just to kind of get her to meet this guy Gio, which is clearly going to be something more important. And this was also a challenge in the original show of Dexter. We have certain characters that are close to Dexter, but that's the double-edged sword of having a Deb, where there's so many good things about having a Deb, like I said in my previous reviews, but there's other part where like, okay, what do you have her do when it's focused on more of Dexter and somebody else? Does it always have to connect to Deb? Is it a trap in a way? But we'll see Deb calls her rival Tiff a menstrual cramp, which is such a funny line. But she's pissed because she sees she can't use her dad's truck for the beach to take the team, so Tiff takes the girls and gives her the finger. But we'll also see, against what Dexter warned her about not to do coke, she goes to a Blockbuster and snorts some coke for the first time, leading to a great Deb line, F a duck, that's awesome. And there's great acting by Molly Brown here when she realizes she was competing with a dead kid for the truck and is just upset because she feels like the odds are against her to even get any kind of attention from her dad, but also just explanations or apologies just to have some kind of normal life as his daughter. So Deb will meet a guy at the club, Gio, Now, he's red flags all the way, even how he responds to her saying she is going to school. So you're wondering how old he is. But he also mentions to Deb he works for his dad. And when Deb asks him what his dad does, he says he just drives me crazy. So that's important that he didn't actually say what his dad does. So I'm thinking he's connected some way to the cartel. And he also makes a joke that's always a red flag where he's like, great, like I can have you all to myself because his dad and his brother she is mad at and doesn't seem as close to. So he likes that. So I think this is going to be that kind of Deb story we've seen before in Dexter where she's connected from a distance to this crime that's going on in the main central story, and that maybe Gio is not an innocent guy. So overall, I'm going to give this episode a 7.8. I think it was strong in the Dexter parts. I think it was strong in the flashbacks, but it suffered with everything going on with Deb right now, and it just didn't have as good of pacing, and it felt a lot of setup and transitional episode. So I don't think this is one that's like pretty memorable like the last one was, but I think it's setting up for the next episode to be really good. I hope it does, but I still really enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought down below, and again, make sure to check out my interview with Molly Brown, the actress of Deb. It is linked in the comments below, and thanks for watching this, and I'll see you next time.